Okay, hello, everyone. This is Roger Chen from University of San Francisco, and we are conducting an interview with Dr. Kavousi and representing the Center for Asia Pacific Studies at the University of San Francisco. So welcome, Dr. Kavousian, and would you
Thank you.
please briefly introduce yourself?
Thanks so much for having me, Roger. I am Amir Kavousian, founder and CEO of DevArmor. We are building at the intersection of AI and cybersecurity.
Okay, thank you. And so let's have a kind of a brief conversation. So maybe could you kind of tell our audience about your company and your product, a little bit more so people understand your business a little bit better.
Of course. So the world of cybersecurity is huge and expanding. And one of the biggest challenges companies have is as they are writing their applications that day-to-day people interact with, such as DoorDash, they order their food on DoorDash, or they order a cab on Uber, and so on. There is a lot of security issues that can happen if the software developers creators of those applications don't follow best practices for cybersecurity. And because security is a game that is changing every day, it's super hard for developers to stay on top of all the changes. What we are doing is we are helping developers of applications to build secure software. And so what that means is that we help them design a better application, and we help them write more secure code, and we help them ship more secure code. And we do that with the help of AI because these days, frankly, the adversaries, the hackers, the people who want to get access to commercial data or sensitive information and personal information, they're all using AI anyway. So the only way for us to be able to curb that is to use the same set of sophisticated tools that hackers use. And that's the essence of what DevArmor does.
That's great. Thank you. So you mentioned about you're using AI to kind of help you, kind of serve your customers. Could you elaborate a little bit more in which way you use kind of AI or AI agent to help customers in the cybersecurity space?
Absolutely. Best way to think about a software development process is it's similar to, let's say, manufacturing. In manufacturing, what you do is you start with designing a new tool or a new product, maybe an iPhone. It always starts with a design, with a blueprint. Engineers go through many iterations of that design. They try to predict anything that could go wrong with that design. The loss of a cell signal, or drop of a phone, or when the battery goes out, what happens? Once they have enough iterations, once they have confidence in the design, they start to build a prototype of that. And then after testing the prototype for a few months, they put that into mass production. And then there's distribution and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
Software
yeah.
process is similar to that. You start with designing, and then you write the code, and then you test the code and eventually deploy and distribute that. What has been done in the past, mostly, at least in the world of security, is we've emphasized the testing process a lot. What that means is that we've always waited for the developers to write their application, maybe create a first version, a test product, and then
Mhm.
we try to test that. This is, for example, someone who sits within the company but tries to hack their way into the system as a benevolent hacker, as you call it.
Yeah.
What we've seen over years is that the design phase of the application development is actually more important to the eventual security and security posture of that application. Just like the
Mhm.
same way that, Apple engineers spend so much time designing a new iPhone, we think software engineers also need to spend more time making sure security of their application is basically top notch while they are designing it. The problem with that is that one of the reasons software teams haven't been able to do that is that security is a very big and specialized activity, and
Mm,
it has its own huge knowledge base. And so not every software developer has the time or the bandwidth, or sometimes frankly the interest, to go in and read every security blog or stay on top of every major security update. And so what we are doing is we're basically asking them, you focus on writing the best application you write, the most beautiful, fastest application, the best user experience. We take care of security for you. And we do that as early as design phase. So by the time you're writing the code, you don't have to worry about, have I designed the application correctly or not? That design phase have been taken care of. That's what DevArmor comes into play. That's the value we are bringing it. Making sure the application is designed securely from day one without extra effort from software developers.
it makes a lot of sense, actually. It's almost like any kind of product design. You try to consider a lot of like a late features or activities moving forward as early as possible. Combine that at the design phase, right? I think it makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. The way we can talk about it is proactive security. Instead of
Yeah.
waiting all the way when the application is built, we are being proactive about it.
So I think for me, actually, it's the more interesting part is how AI brings some changes to that, because if I remember or understand correctly, you're using some AI agent. So maybe could you elaborate on that part, like how AI is changing your particular kind of a business domain in a sense?
Absolutely. So the way to think about security is that um, most security teams are start with a set of security policies. These are,
Mm,
let's say, documents where they detail the security posture of the organization. These are
mm,
similar to legal documents. They are written in
yeah.
human natural language.
Mm.
And they could be hundreds of pages. They could also
Oh.
link to external documents, let's say government regulations or compliance documents that again are hundreds of pages. So if a developer or anyone really in the organization wants to really wrap their head around security and what is the right thing to do, they may have to read thousands of pages of documents, and no one has time for that. Those documents are always changing, and even if they have time to do it, just reading it once, they could forget, they could make mistakes. Now, there are certain things that AI is better than humans. One of them,
Mm,
especially the latest iteration of AI, the LLMs, are better than humans in processing long documents, large corpus of natural language data, and summarizing them or correlating
yeah.
them with other sources of data. That's
Mm,
where our innovation comes into play. We allow the teams to specify what are the requirements, what are the policies, what are the regulations, what are the compliance schemes that our software needs to adhere to, and then we translate those into specific code and application requirements that software developers need to pay attention to. And so one way to think about it is that there is this world of compliance and security, which is natural language, legal type of documents. And then
mm,
there's this world of code, which is a very strict representation of bits of data. And to combine the two or to correlate the two for the past 30, 40 years, big teams of product security and application security had to digest regulations and compliance documents,
yeah.
had to understand code, make correlation. With AI, they don't need to spend so much time in doing that. AI is actually better than humans in doing so. And those application security engineers can still stay on top of this correlation, can still be the driving force, but they can use AI as a way to scale themselves up. With our application, they spend 80% less time processing all
Oh.
of that document compared to doing it manually.
So now I see the benefit of using AI in kind of a making this process much more productive. Though I can imagine in the old days, probably you need human labor to digest these 100 pages of a policy, security document, translate them, and give to the software coder. But now it can use AI agent to do these work, maybe with some human supervisions. Is that correct?
Absolutely. You can scale your team up without having to necessarily, have more human laborers working on that. Or if you have an existing team, they can spend their time and energy and resources on more higher ROI activities, higher value activities compared to reading, hundreds of pages of documents. Nobody really wants to read so much, documents and, have to
Yeah,
reread them
yeah.
all the time. And so this way they can spend more time on writing application, basically building a better user experience for the users.
Yeah, I just try to kind of, better understand the context in this particular situation where you have a software developer and let's call these people kind of an interpreter of
Mhm.
these document policies, right? So which kind of a service do you provide? Do you provide the service of writing the security code as well as kind of going through or ask AI agent to go through these documents, translating those documents into the request or requirement? Do you provide these kind of services or only provide some of these services?
That's a great point. Primarily, we ask AI or we leverage AI to go through a list of regulations and policies, translate them into very specific requirements
Mhm.
for the code base. And those requirements can be consumed by other AI agents who write the code or humans who write the code. There is still, this duality that we are facing, which part of the code is being written by humans, part of it is written by AI. Um, but the translation of those policies to specific requirements, that's the main value proposition that we bring. Now, there is more to that because so the first phase is translate requirements and come up with specific instructions for AI agents to write the code or humans to write the code. There is a second element to it, which is after the code is written, how do we verify that the output actually
Yeah.
meets the requirements? And that's again that's where we come into play again. We also automate the process of verification, what we call identifying drifts from the intended design. And so, in that sense of the word, many teams are now using AI generated code or AI code generation platforms such as Cursor, Lovable, or other tools such as Augment and so on. What we are doing is basically we are covering everything that happens before and everything that happens after that with respect to security.
Okay, I see. Now, so you basically provide like almost like a end-to-end services, starting from, but one thing I assume for these policy document or regulation document that you will ask AI agent to go through, those documents still come from the customer companies.
That's true. Yes. So the requirements, the instructions, everything that you need to pay attention to still comes from the customer companies. And this happens a lot when you have an application that is being used, in real world applications. I use Lovable myself. I use Cursor. I use all these like vibe coding applications. Some of them do a better job than the rest in creating applications that are, let's say, enterprise ready or they can be used commercially. Not all of them are on the same level. Um, the in my experience, the difference between the two is that how much time and energy and detail have I spent to create a very detailed and kind of prescriptive instruction to pass to that platform. And so security has always been a gap because again, software developers don't necessarily have that context, don't have that expertise. And so we are trying to fill that gap by saying because the code generation platforms are essentially following your instructions, if you leave security out of those instructions, they're going to make some decisions that they assume is the right choice, but that doesn't always align with the company priorities. That doesn't always align with the regulations that your specific company is required to follow. And so we are bringing that security context into the instructions that we pass to AI code generation tools.
Oh, it makes lots of sense, right? Because AI does not know. AI only does whatever you ask AI to do. So basically, your point is when you give the instruction to AI, maybe you can call that prompt or whatever you call it, you want to incorporate the security element into it, even at the designing phase.
Absolutely, exactly, and that's a huge problem, and that's why we need tools, for example, like DevArmor, in order to bring that security context into the prompt that goes into AI. Because at the end of the day, as you said, AI doesn't know anything beyond the code. The regulations and the compliance docs and so on is outside of the code base, so AI doesn't even have access to those. Plus. AI is designed to write code faster, and that means that these AI agents try to minimize the amount of context that they send back and forth, and that means they have to leave out some crucial details, especially from security standpoint. What we are doing is we are compacting them, and we are creating very specific instructions that then AI can use to generate more secure code.
Thank you. That's excellent. These are kind of fascinating because as now we can see, I'm kind of more interested in knowing or maybe learning from you how AI is changing your business practice, especially compared with the traditional business practice. So, from customers' perspective, I'm sure, I assume your customers are mostly companies. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Other companies who write software, basically.
Oh, so your customers are typically the companies that are writing software code for their clients, I assume, right?
Their clients, or let's say they have a consumer app or they have a consumer web
Hmm.
application. Yes.
Okay. So here is the question. Um, in when you incorporate kind of an AI element in the security code process, as you described, does that require the customer company to change the process, to change the behavior compared with the pre-agentic time? In other words, in order uh, to work with you using AI to incorporate security, do customers need to make some changes? And what are the changes, if so?
That's an excellent question because that's I think any new tool needs to ask themselves this question: Am I changing the workflow, or am I augmenting or making an existing workflow um,
Hmm.
more optimized or more efficient? The short answer is that there are two different personas of users for our
Hmm.
application.
Hmm.
One persona is the security team. This is a
Hmm.
team within the organization who is charged or tasked by making sure the application is being developed and deployed and maintained securely. And then the
Hmm.
second persona are software developers, the ones who
Hmm.
are writing the code. And again, even though most companies are using AI code gen, software developers are still kind of running the show.
Hmm. Hmm.
For the former group, security practitioners, we allow them to automate their workflows using our prescribed workflow.
So could I kind of stop you? Maybe could you kind of have a little bit further clarification on the former team? Could you give us the examples so we have better understanding about their role? Although I understand they do not write the code, which is second team writing, but
Yep.
specific, give us the example about their task or function so I think we can better follow your explanation later.
Absolutely. So the security team, almost any organization who's writing code also
Hmm.
has a kind of a group or a team who are tasked with security. These are cybersecurity professionals where, some of them are focusing on making sure the code is being written securely. They help engineers basically understand and implement security concepts into their applications. Some of
Oh.
them are tasked with making sure, for example, the cloud infrastructure that the company is using is secure. For example, they make
Oh.
sure that all the data in the cloud is encrypted. They make sure that everybody in the company has multi-factor authentication. They make sure that the passwords are strong enough or they get rotated enough. They are basically the make sure the security hygiene of the organization and the application is set into play. And they interact and work closely with the software engineers, but they don't necessarily write software code.
Now I understand. Yeah, yeah. Just these people like a gatekeeper, they manage the security, they ensure the security. They do not necessarily write the code for the security.
Exactly, and the kind of the phrase that the industry and most of the professionals um, you know prefer to use is that they are enablers, and they
Oh,
put in security guardrails so that software teams don't feel that security is slowing them down, but they think that security is building a paved pathway that leads to a secure destination for them, as opposed to being a gatekeeper. But to your point, they make sure that no insecure software makes its way to eventual hands of the customers, and so
yeah, yeah.
they are in
I think
charge of that.
yeah, it makes sense because every company need some kind of people to manage and implement monitoring the security policies in a sense.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Exactly. And
Yeah.
so, kind of back to the earlier conversation about two different personas within each customer organization, security team and software team. Security team is already familiar with almost all the concepts that our application is automating. Uh,
Hmm.
what we do is we bring in a automated workflow so they can
Hmm.
use that and follow through those workflows. One example that I usually give is that before Airbnb, everybody knew how to find, for example, a vacation in a house. They would go online, they search. Maybe there were some search sites before. They would contact the owner. They would maybe negotiate a price and inquire about the dates. Eventually, maybe sign a contract, and then they show up and they ask maybe about like how do I access the building. So everybody had the same workflow. What Airbnb really did and did an amazing job was that it made it super low friction for them to follow the same process. Now instead of like, spending so much time with like 30 emails, 50 emails back and forth, you have an application where with 5 clicks you can reserve a spot for your vacation. We have a
Yeah.
similar mindset about security. Security professionals already have been going through these processes, but they've been using spreadsheets and old way of doing things, and maybe
Oh,
they've been doing many emails or Slack messages, and how that goes. Usually that context gets lost, people forget, and it's super hard to kind of get everybody and keep everybody on the same page. What we are doing essentially is we're creating an application, and we're creating an automated workflow to put that into a structure so that everybody always at the same time knows what's required for the next step. And so with that, we are not necessarily changing the workflow. We are not changing the way that they are doing things. We're making it easier and less friction for them to follow that. So that's the first persona. The second persona, the software developers, our goal is for them to absolutely don't even have to change anything about the way that they are doing things. The reason for that is that software developers historically have created a very optimized workflow and toolchain for them to be productive.
hmm.
Software development is a very high mental load activity, and so anything that creates friction in that process will have some pushback from the industry. And so what we are doing is we are creating a way for software developers to stay in their workflows, don't change anything, will come meet you where you are. And so what that means is that we have integrations into all the different tool chain that they have. They have different tools for planning. They have different tools for writing the code. They have different tool for reviewing the code. We have integrations into all of these tool chains. So our security feedback is delivered to them where they actually are working right now.
Okay. So that's kind of interesting. In a sense, actually, for the former team, the security management team, you do give them some kind of a new workflow for them to follow, right? Maybe can you elaborate why you need to? I'm sure there's a very good reason, but could you explain why it's necessary to give this security management team the new workflow to enable your service.
And to clarify, we're giving them a new tool and platform in order to optimize their existing workflows, of not
Oh,
fundamentally changing the workflow in that sense. But the way we look at it is this: every trade, every organization, every team will have an evolution of tool chains, right? We always started, when back in the day, emails were just a linear way of doing back and forth emails, and if you had a email thread, it was hard to kind of look up the old emails. And now Gmail and other email clients are making it much easier to have emails on your phone, on your tablet,
yeah.
on your computer, and so on. And so they've created this platform to make it easier to work with something that you already know how to work with. And so that's what we're trying to achieve here. Instead of we are bringing all the different um, activities, all the different tasks, all the different steps into one single workflow that they can tap into, and at any point in time have that full on visibility. The reason this was necessary was that there is a lot of context that gets lost in Slack messages, in emails or spreadsheets, and those require mental overload and time spent to remember what was said before, or coordination tasks, which is basically, hey, let's hop on a meeting to again discuss what are the next steps. That's half an hour lost for two individuals on the team. Whereas
Yeah.
if they had, let's say, a dashboard, if they already have, a place where they could both go to and know exactly what was done so far and what needs to be done next, that's so much time that we've saved from many individuals on the organization. And so a better way maybe to describe what we are doing here is that we are putting a structure around an existing workflow and bringing it from something that used to be manual and linear and using a combination of different communication tools into one single tool, one single platform where everybody knows what's going on at all times.
It makes a lot of sense. And also the other, thing, because, I kind of look at the AI agent.
Yep.
Many times those in order to use the agent, it is necessary to have basic guardrail or kind
Yep.
of work process. Probably that's why you need to have certain kind of work process for the security management team to use or follow, right?
Absolutely. Process is a great word, and that's something that security teams are very well aware of. And for most of their activities and actions and goals, they need to have a process. And now the process can be managed by someone using a pen and paper. It can be managed by someone using a spreadsheet. The problem with pen and paper and a spreadsheet is one person has access to, it's not a standardized. If they leave the company, the second person comes in, they can't really have wrap their head around it. But when you have a structured way to doing that, again, I'll compare that with renting a vacation house before Airbnb and after Airbnb. Now anybody who has access to it, they know exactly the process, they know the next steps, they have clarity and specificity at every step of the way.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So relating to this, my follow-up question is, have you run into the situation where the customer company, especially this kind of security management teams, they kind of felt reluctant or not willing or not able or even do not know how to change their work process in order to conform to what you ask them to do?
So, this is something that you always need to work with your clients to educate and onboard them.
Mm.
Part of that will be kind of ongoing customer success that you need to kind of spend time with your clients. Um, I wouldn't say that it has been confusing for customers to kind of conform to this process, but areas where we've had to maybe come up with creative ways to implement this has mostly been when the intersection between security and software team has been challenging. And that's a common issue within the organizations because again, security teams and software teams have different end goals and different metrics to be measured on, and as a result, sometimes there is, internal conflict between the two teams or friction between the two teams. And so times when we've had maybe challenge with respect to implementation has been when software teams wanted to maybe move at a different speed or a different process, and security team was maybe insisting on a specific type of workflow, and that's where we had to come in and kind of bring the two together. But when it comes to security team itself, when it comes to adopting a new workflow, for the most part, it's been we've had some feedback, but for the most part it's been smooth to implement that.
That's excellent because normally when I talk to other people, they typically talk about a similar scenario where a company or customers need to change their process behavior, but they kind of report it. Sometimes it's not easy, it's not easy for the customers to change their process. But can you just maybe uh, share your thoughts why, in your case, the security management teams itself? I understand the intersection between the two teams, there's the frictions because of the new process. But why within the security teams, adopting your new process, which is required for AI agent, is not a big deal. And that's kind of very good news to know.
Yeah, of course. So security is a very a special activity and trade. Uh,
Mm,
and I'll tell you why. The reason for that is that when you're part of a security team, your end
mm,
goal is clear. You need to make sure the
mm.
application is designed, developed, deployed, and maintained securely. Um, you also have certain compliance or regulation schemes that you need to follow. So
Oh,
for you, again, it's clear that here's the list of 20, items that I need to make sure they are followed. And so there is some level of a standardization that has already been, or consolidation that has already been implemented in the industry. And so when, for example, a company hires a new security team, for
mm.
them, it's clear where they want to be eventually.
Oh,
The challenging part is how to get there.
mm,
And the main challenge usually is that security team has a mandate to keep the application secure.
mm.
But as part of that mandate, especially when it comes to application security, they need to get software developers to follow their recommended workflows. And so security itself knows that in order for me to meet this mandate, in order for me to meet this compliance scheme, here are the things I need to do. If we come in and show them that, adopting our tool, adopting our workflow helps them meet that requirement, they couldn't be happier than that because we are solving an existing problem for them. Where it gets into challenge, and I mentioned in my previous response, is the intersection and interface with the software team, because software team doesn't necessarily have the same mandate as security team, or they don't have visibility into that mandate. And so for them, it's more challenging to see someone coming in and asking them to now do these 5 extra things, when up until yesterday their only mandate was ship software fast because we need to go get more customers. And so there is always this duality between security teams and software teams, um, and we are trying to attribute to reducing that duality by making security context more accessible to software teams, so that if security is asking software developers to do something, they can also tell them exactly why they need to do it, because they
Okay.
need to follow these regulations in order to stay in business.
Makes a lot of sense. So basically, you were saying for the application of the AI agents, if the task is very objective, measurable, has a clear yes or no, wrong or correct answers, it's easier to implement standardized AI agent process,
Exactly.
right? But
Precisely.
when you can't, actually in your case, the software developers, because they don't have this kind of KPI following these or they do not understand these security policies, they have different criteria. That's where you see some kind of a pushbacks from the security teams. Because I think that's an excellent point to understand when we may possibly meet the challenges applying the AI agents, right?
Absolutely. And that's a within the security vendor or security solutions community, that's an I would say open understanding that we can't just create a tool where we think this is the right way to do things, because security teams know very well like what needs to be done, because they have the expertise and the context. Where we can be successful is by telling them, you need to follow or meet these 200 requirements. We can help you meet 10 of them. We can help you meet 100 of them, or even one of them. But unless we create that very direct correlation and relationship, it will be challenging to sell to cybersecurity teams as well.
Okay, thank you. So maybe last question relating to this. As you can see, when you apply more and more AI agent into your business, into your products, obviously affecting the cybersecurity management team as well as the software development, kind of a teams. Do you see some kind of a gaps in terms of, on the client side, on the customer side? Because I'm very interested in the adoption of AI by companies. So do you have any kind of insights about the new knowledge, the new mindsets that customers or companies need to develop in order to embrace the AI agents?
That's a good question, and I think it's changing.
Mm.
I started looking at AI way back. This was the topic of my graduate studies. So I've been following
Oh,
this space for 15 plus years. I think especially in the past few years, we are seeing a change in mindset, especially with the latest iteration of LLMs. And so the arc that we've been seeing that's been happening is we started with some doubt and speculation. Then there was this huge optimism about AI, maybe automating a lot of jobs, and maybe doubts and fear about replacing humans. But I think after a few years of seeing AI solutions in place, we are having a better understanding of what AI is good at and what it's not so good at. And so,
mm,
for instance, we've had amazing implementation of AI as a knowledge base interface, right?
mm,
Because again, they're so good at understanding large corpus of data and being
yeah.
able to present that in a very accessible way, right? Where we haven't seen a lot of success is when AI had to make a very concrete decision on its own. If that,
Mm,
decision needed some, logic that doesn't wasn't necessarily easy to digest just using just natural language data. And so there is this dichotomy right now where there are certain applications of AI where consumers, end users, companies are starting to embrace. Like for example, like Glean.ai is a really good success story. And then there are AI agents where companies are starting to find where they can be used. In my personal opinion, what we are gonna see over the next year is um, the AI agents kind of starting to find their own niche as a co-pilot to a lot of human activities. Um, I don't see necessarily, especially with a lot of decision-making activities where AI agents can replace humans, but it can be an excellent co-pilot, an excellent assistant to humans to manage a lot of, complicated and fast moving data. And I think we are seeing that with with adoption as well. Again, on the, let's say there are tools or platforms such as Sierra.ai, such as Green.ai. These are maybe being used as knowledge base for customer data, for customer success data, for customer support, or internal knowledge base of an organization. They have huge adoption. But then on the other side, there are tools where, if they claim, we, for example, could replace humans for, making some complex decisions, or making financial decisions and so on and so forth, we are seeing a little bit more hesitation there.
Yeah.
It's changing, and I think, also on the developer side, on the software vendor side, there's this again reckoning with, how much we can stretch AI, how much we can use deterministic data. And I think once kind of yeah, we find that those niche areas for AI, we're going to see more increased adoption. The one thing that is constant is that this wave of AI is fundamentally changing how companies are doing business. It's fundamentally changing how software is being developed, and it's fundamentally changing how even consumers expect their software to work. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, when I go to
Mm.
a product page on Amazon,
Mm.
I don't read the reviews anymore. I used to read the first 3 pages of reviews. Now I just use their AI assistant to say, just summarize all the reviews for me, and that's good enough for me. It's saving me so much time and hassle, and it's saving me so much, mental overload of having to read, 50, 60, 80 reviews in order to come up with a, maybe a solid, idea of the product. It's saving me time. It's saving me hassle. I love it.
Oh, I don't realize actually now Amazon provide those kind of service. They have an AI agent to summarize the customer review for you.
Absolutely, and you can ask questions about it. You can ask questions about, okay, so what do consumers talk about longevity of this product, or has any
Oh,
customer used this in a, I don't know, like an outdoor environment, if it is an electronic, or something along those lines. You can ask questions, and it doesn't always answer the right. Kind of have a very very clear like answer, but when it does, and most of the time, and it's becoming more and more common that it does, then that solves a big problem. Like, we used to spend so much time reviewing everything and going through online search, but now all of that has been taken care of.
yeah, that's an excellent kind of use case scenario. By the way, what is your pricing model? How do you charge customers for their services, products, or so?
So there are two components to how we charge customers.
Mm.
There's a component, obviously, with as we call the platform component. This is a fixed charge um, that we charge on an annual basis for customers, and that covers our research and development, product development, and just basic, building the product. And then there's a usage component there, because AI inference is still the cost is significant. We have to basically be aware of, some of the customers are going to use the application much more, and they are going to have a much higher cost basis for us, and some customers less. And so we need to be fair to customers with that respect. And so the way that we have solved that problem is that we have different tiers of the product, and based on the usage, customers can go into different tiers, and we charge them based on that.
Okay, thank you.